Hi there, this is DM Nell, and this is the first of a series of videos that I'm going to be producing that is focused on a game that is called Shadow of the Demon Lord. And so I'm calling this video series SOTDL Talk, SOTDL being the initials of the game, Shadow of the Demon Lord, or SOTDL. And I kind of call it SOTDL for short. And so there you go, SOTDL Talk. Now, as you can tell, I am not a professional at this. I don't produce videos normally. I don't do podcasts. I am not a professional speaker. So this is very much what do you call it? A ground up, grassroots effort to do this type of series. So it's going to seem very rough, especially here at first, until I get used to this sort of thing. Um, but the reason I'm doing this is because I feel like this is something that is needed. Um, Shadow of the Demon Lord is a role playing game that is produced by Schwalb Entertainment. Came out about 2.5 years ago, 2015, I think. And it is it's a game that has its roots in a few other role playing games, Dungeons and Dragons, um, Warhammer Fantasy, to name a couple. And the creator of the game is Robert J. Schwalb, who is a game designer that has his name on tons and tons of RPGs out there. And I really enjoy his writing style. I really enjoy his game design. And so when he started the Kickstarter for this back in 2014, I think, it may have been 2015, but anyway, when he started it, it really drew me in, just with the premise that he produced for the Kickstarter, and it kind of scratches an itch that I didn't know I had, and it offers a an opportunity to do a role playing game that is similar in style to other fantasy role playing games, but um, doesn't have the baggage that a lot of the other role playing games have. I normally run Dungeons and Dragons. That's pretty much been my go to RPG for many years, and I still run Dungeons and Dragons. I have a weekly game that I run, and I love Dungeons and Dragons. I've run it for years, and I've run just about every edition that has been produced since Advanced in Dungeons and Dragons. So this is by no means disparaging that game. D&D is a great game, but it comes with a lot of baggage, and sometimes you just want to start fresh with something different. And that is what Shadow of the Demon Lord is. It is something different, but it is still familiar. It is a game that has a game system that is very easy to play, very easy to learn. Feels very familiar because it uses the D20 um, as its primary task resolution system. But it also has a lot of innovations that I just really enjoy in this game. So this video series is filling a niche that I think needs to be filled. Um, and the reason I'm doing it is simply because nobody else is doing it. I've been complaining on the G Plus community that we need a podcast highlighting this game, because I think we need people out there that are, really just talking about this game and sharing this game and publicizing this game to get the word out and to spread the news and the joys of this game. And unfortunately, there have been a few efforts, but nothing consistent. And um, so, I'm kind of stepping up to do it, even though I'm not really good at it. So, as you can tell, this isn't a professional thing, and I'm not intending to do a professional video series. It's not going to have a theme song. It's not going to have professional graphics. It's basically just going to have me, my video camera, and my screenshots. And so hopefully that'll be enough to convey the awesomeness of this game. But if not, hopefully it will encourage others who are better at this sort of thing to step up and do a better job than me, because really I want somebody to do a better job than me, because I think that this is a great game, and I really think that it needs somebody that is willing to talk about it, and to highlight all the cool stuff about it in a way that people enjoy and will want to watch over and over or listen to over and over again. So anyway, that's why I'm doing this. And so let me just kind of jump in and say that this first episode is essentially just going to be me giving an overview of what Shadow of the Demon Lord is, what I like about it, um, and that's really just about it for this first episode. Now, as I do more of these, I plan on getting more specific into topics like reviewing the core rulebook, reviewing the world that is embedded in the rule system, talking about the various supplements that have been released, talking about the way the game is actually played, and highlighting some of the rules, and highlighting some of the adventures that have been produced, and the campaigns that have been produced for the game, and just basically doing a deeper dive into the various aspects of this cool game. And there's a lot. Even though the game is only a couple years old, Robert J. Schwalb is a machine. I think he is actually a robot, and he is pumping out so much material for this game that it is really amazing that the guy is still functional as a human being. But he is, at least from what I heard on other podcasts and such. But at any rate, he sounds like a really cool guy. I wish I was buddies with him, but alas, um, all I can do is enjoy the product that he produces, and he's produced a shit ton of products so far. So I'm going to do my best to go into all of that stuff eventually, and just talk about what I like about it. Now, I will also probably talk about some of the things that I don't like about it, at least touch on them. But I'm not going to dwell on those things, because really the point of the series is to get people to play it, and to spread the gospel of this game. So, everybody's going to nitpick a role playing game. There's no role playing game out there that is perfect. Even after 5 iterations, Dungeons and Dragons, I still have problems with it. But as a game that is right out of the gate 2 years old, it's pretty darn good. And I would put it right up there with Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, Pathfinder, and any other role playing game that's currently being produced. It is full of awesomeness, and it's a great system. So this series is going to highlight that stuff, and it's going to be, at least from my perspective anyway, it's going to be me talking about the things that encompass this game. All right, having done that preface, let me just kind of give you a broad overview of what Shadow of the Demon Lord is. First of all, it's advertised as a fantasy horror game. Now, I don't know if there are. I'm pretty sure there are other horror fantasy games out there. I've not played them myself. I've had a little bit of experience with Warhammer Fantasy, but for the most part, I don't know much about horror fantasy. Fantasy role playing, I know quite a bit about. I've played D&D for many, many years, and run D&D for many, many years. But fantasy horror is a genre or subgenre, basically, that takes the fantasy tropes that we all know, Lord of the Rings, Dungeons and Dragons, all that stuff, and basically incorporates some horror elements into the system and into the game. Now, even though it is advertised as a fantasy horror game, I personally think that it could be very easily run as just a fantasy role-playing game, because the horror elements are very easily removed from the system. I mean, very easily. They are not so baked in that the system is dependent on those elements. I'll probably talk about that more when I go into the the uh, the rule book and the various aspects of the game system. So if you're one of those people that maybe have run D&D or Pathfinder or similar games for years, and you're just kind of getting tired of it and you want to try something different but not too different, this is your game, because Shadow the Demon Lord is very easily converted over to just a fantasy game with very little tinkering. However, if you want to play it as it's written, as a fantasy horror game, it is a pretty brutal game. And by brutal, I mean that it's a game system that is easy to learn, but gameplay can be very, very challenging. Um, Players have all kinds of options, but those options are necessary because the tools available to the game master to throw at the players are very, very challenging and very brutal. And they're meant to be that way. Um, the name of the game is Shadow the Demon Lord, and that's because demons play a large, large role in this game, or can, I should say. I mean, as a GM, you could always decide not to highlight all the demon stuff that is available. You could quite easily run the game, focusing on other monsters, because there's a lot of monsters to choose from. But even those are pretty darn difficult. And that is done purposefully because this game is meant to be challenging. Um, a game or a campaign run in this game system where you start with a character and end with the same character is very possible. I just finished one. I just finished playing in one, I should say, and I just finished running one a couple months ago. And it's very possible to do that. However, it's also very possible for you to lose your character in the very first game session or in the first handful of game sessions, um, because it's a tough game. And that's part of the charm of the game. That's part of the allure of the game. It is difficult, it's challenging, and it's fun. It's extremely fun. And I really cannot sing the praises of Shadow the Demon Lord more. So enough spewing my fanboyism about the game. Let me just kind of talk about what the game is. Okay, so fantasy horror game. So what does that mean? So that means um, you're playing with the usual fantasy tropes. You've got your players are playing adventurers that share similarities with other role-playing games. So you start off the game with a warrior type, or you can play a rogue type, or you can play a spellcasting magician type, or you can play a religious fanatic type, cleric type. And how that all works is something that I'll highlight when I get into the game rules and the core rule book. But all those same fantasy tropes that are in Dungeons and Dragons and all those other fantasy role-playing games are here. So you're not missing out on anything if you're jumping from D&D to Shadow of the Demon Lord. If you're playing a sword and board fighter in D&D, you can play a sword and board fighter in Shadow of the Demon Lord. If you're playing a wizard, You can in D&D, you can play a wizard in Shadow of the Demon Lord. If you've got your favorite rogue or thief or whatever you want to call it from Pathfinder or whatever, you can do that in Shadow of the Demon Lord. All of those are very possible. In fact, I would dare say that they are even more possible in this game because of all of the options available to players to customize their characters. But again, more on that in another episode. All right, so all those fantasy tropes are there. You also have the usual array of fantasy monsters. So you've got, dragons are there, demons are there. You've got undead. You've got elementals. You've got things like golems. You got all that, the usual stuff. So it's going to feel very familiar. Just because all of the things that you're used to in those other role-playing games are in this role-playing game as well. Now, when you start injecting the horror aspect into the game, that's when you start getting into things that are not baked into the system of Dungeons and Dragons or in Pathfinder. So you have horrific elements to the game. There are mechanics for horror. There are mechanics for being exposed to your character being exposed to bad things over and over again, and how that eventually wears upon your character in the form of corruption and insanity. All of those things are part of Shadow of the Demon Lord and help to create this atmosphere of this heavy atmosphere of this is a world that is engulfed in evil and this oppressive feeling of bad things and horror and the things that are trying to just tear the world apart being ever present is felt throughout the game because of these game elements. And that's what creates the horror aspect of the game. Now, as I said earlier, you can kind of back off of those things and just play it as a straight up fantasy game. I haven't tried that yet. I want to try that, but I haven't done that yet. But I've run the game many times now, and I can envision very easily doing that. So I will probably have a video of talking about that at some point in the future. But for now, I just want to focus on the game as is. Okay, so a typical Shadow of the Demon Lord campaign, or even just a game, isn't going to necessarily be like a Dungeons and Dragons game. In Dungeons and Dragons, you are assumed to be a hero. You're assumed to be wanting to do the right thing, to try to, save the princess or to rid the village of, the bandits or the infestation of gnolls or goblins or whatever. Not necessarily in Shadow of the Demon Lord. You're probably going to be running a heroic-ish character, meaning that there are going to be bad guys, and you're going to be fighting against the bad guys. But your character is also going to have some things about them that aren't going to be necessarily viewed as good guy things. Your character is going to be dirty. They're not going to be knights in shining armor. They're going to be tarnished. And to a more or lesser degree, just based on the type of character that you want to play. If you want to play a knight in shining armor, you can certainly do that. Whether they stay a knight in shining armor from start to finish is questionable, considering all the things that can tarnish that shining armor. But if you want to play that type of character, you're certainly able to do that in this game. But yeah, you're probably going to start playing the game with some characters that are maybe not necessarily squeaky clean, and that's expected. That's fine. If you want to run a squeaky clean character, you can do that. Um, they're probably not going to last very long as a squeaky clean character. They're going to get dirty pretty quick, and that's fine. That's expected. If you don't want to play that type of game, or run that type of game as a GM, like I said, the rules are very amiable, allowing you to run the type of game that you want to run. But if you're running the game as written, that's what you can expect. Um, so the type of adventures that you will be playing in, um, they can be rather disturbing. And I like to tell people when people that I play with this game uh, that I haven't played with before or haven't played this game before, I like to give them kind of a disclaimer and tell them that if there were ratings for role playing games, I would give this a rated R. Um, it is a solid rated R. Especially the way I run it, it is definitely a rated R game. There are elements to the adventures that have been published and that I like to create that are not for the squeamish, not for people who are easily offended, not for people who don't like horror elements. So if you don't like horror movies, or if you get scared easily, or if you are, like I said, offended easily, disgusted easily, this may not be the game for you. But at least out of the box, it may not be the game for you. You might want to clean it up a bit before you run it. But if you're running it as written, then yeah, it is a rated R game. Um, so just as an example, you could very easily run an adventure where you are your adventurer is going to a town that is under the influence of a curse or uh, something that is causing the town folk to act very differently. So they can be they could be just doing very evil things, thinking that it is okay just because they're under this curse. And by evil, just kind of think about the worst things that you can think of that you've seen from serial killers in the real world, and that's the sort of thing that you can throw into this game. Um, people just bringing out the worst aspects of humanity, and that could be the backdrop to a typical adventure. Um, working for somebody who is just a despicable person or a despicable monster. Um, that could very well be the background for your gaming group. You are working for a slaver, or you are um, working for a or hired by a noble who is is in a family that's very incestuous. I mean, you name it. Just think about all the crap that's happened in our real world history that people don't highlight, or history doesn't highlight because they're really taboo. All those taboos are welcome in this game, and it's kind of encouraged to just do what you can to scare, horrify, grossify, terrify your players as much as possible by incorporating those elements into this game. There are some guidelines on how to do that, written in the core rulebook, which I will, may get to at some point someday. But anyway, so so yeah, the adventures can be pretty gruesome. Again, not squeaky clean. You're not saving the princess. If you are saving the princess, then there's something When you find the princess, you're going to find that she is not what you would expect a princess to be. Um, and you may be questioning yourself, why am I saving this despicable thing? Um, and you may decide instead to rid the world of it. It's very possible uh, to run the game or run an adventure or plan an adventure where your end goal is to do a thing and you end up doing the opposite because the opposite would be saving the world instead of fulfilling your obligation. But anyway, um, so the adventures can be pretty gritty, and the campaigns can be very gritty. I just finished running a campaign that was published by the Schwalb Entertainment, and the game was it's called Tales from the Demon Lord. It's one of the two published campaigns for the setting and for the game, and yeah, my group that went through it when I finished it, basically they felt like they needed to take a shower. So, after one of my players literally said that, and after he said that, I was like, yes, mission accomplished. Um, so it's if you like that, this is your game. If you don't like that, you can dial that aspect of it down to your liking. But I would suggest trying to run the game as written, at least your first time out for a couple of adventures, and see how you like it. So just to kind of wrap up this first video, and just to kind of give you an idea, I want most of my videos to be 30 minutes or less. I really don't want them to be extremely long. So I'm going to try to, and I'm not doing any editing. I don't edit. So you're going to get stream of thought stuff from me. And, you may have to, fast forward through my pauses or whatnot if you get sick of them. But anyway, it is what it is until somebody better comes along. So yeah, the just to wrap this first video up as an overview. Um, if you like D&D, if you like Pathfinder, but you're looking for something that's similar but different, something that feels familiar but doesn't come with all the baggage that those things come with, then I strongly encourage you to jump on this game. You can find the core rule books and all the supplements in uh, online at Drive Through RPG. Schwalb Entertainment also has a website. Just Google Schwalb Entertainment and it'll come right up. And he also has a lot of cool game related stuff to go along with the game. So, t-shirts and tokens and stuff like that. I may spend an episode kind of highlighting his website and all the products that you can get. But I don't work for Schwalb. I don't get any kickbacks from this. I'm just trying to spread the game out to as many people as possible. So if I can highlight his website by doing that, then what the hell, I'll do that in an episode. But at any rate, I really really want people to try this game. It's fun. It is worth your while. So get the core rule book. You can get it for I think on Drive Through RPG you can get it for $20, which is very affordable. Finding a hard copy of the book, it may be challenging because I've only seen it in a couple of gaming stores that I've been in, and even then they only had one copy of it. So you may have to order it online if you want a physical copy of it. The supplements that come with the game, you're not going to find in any game store. You're going to have to get the PDF, or you have to order a print-on-demand copy from Drive-Thru RPG. But I have done that with several of the supplements, and they are very good quality, usually softback, very affordable. And that's the other thing about this game. it is extremely affordable. And I'll get into that when I go talk about these supplements. But if you don't have a whole lot of money to spend, that's okay. This game, everything you need is in the core rulebook to just play the game for many, many, many months. But if you want to branch out and get supplements, all the supplements are extremely affordable, and I'll get into that more on separate video. So anyway, I want to wrap this up. This is my first video. Sorry if I rambled, and hope you got something out of it. You can find me in the G Plus community. I am in the Shadow of the Demon Lord community, and my handle is dmnell at gmail.com, I think, or something like that. Anyway, I don't do a whole lot of social media, so I really don't do the Facebooks and stuff like that. But I am on Twitter as DMNell. And I am in Google Plus with the Shadow of the Demon Lord community. So I encourage you to go there because there's a lot of good discussion in the Shadow of the Demon Lord community, and I may do an episode about that. But if you have any questions for me, that's a good place to find me, or on Twitter. So let me wrap things up there, and I will catch you in my next video. Thanks for watching.